ghast, demons, and venomous mummies. All items sold for entertainment purposes only. Chiselwicks accepts no liability for any accidental murderings.
All the tabletop role-playing news. We aim to amuse and we aim to enthuse. And Morrus's unofficial tabletop RPG.
Hello, and welcome to Morrus's unofficial tabletop RPG talk. I, as always, am Russ, aka Morrus, or Morrus, aka Russ. And with me this week, somewhat unusually, because Peter is away in the deepest parts of Peru, apparently on a hunt for the ultimate marmalade sandwich, and standing in for him is a friend of the show, Shane Stacks. Hello, Shane.
Hey, Russ, what's going on? AKA Morrus. Hello, and hello.
So you're not alone, Shane?
I am not alone. I'm actually joined by a very good friend of mine, Matt Barton, who is a literal PhD, a professor of video games, AKA the video game professor. He has a YouTube channel called Matt Chat, and he is the authority on computer role-playing games, but I'll let him introduce himself further from here.
I feel like I should have worn one of those suits with the sleeves, the elbow.
Yeah,
elbow
you should have
patches,
the
the elbow
just
patches.
covered in flecks
Hi,
of chalk
Shane.
dust.
Hi, Morrus.
Yeah.
Hi, Russ. Morrus. Russ Morrus.
So the two of you are co-authors on a hefty tome that I have here in my hands. This book weighs about as much as my dog. It's 600 pages, and it's called Dungeons and Desktops, The History of Computer Role-Playing Games. Second edition, no less.
Dun dun dun.
And we are going to dive into this in more detail later in the show, but just so the listeners know, who Matt is and why he's on the show, we're here to talk about this book, which delves into the whole history of CRPGs from, I think, going back right to the start up till modern day.
It actually starts with the first CRPG that was played on cave walls in between bison hunting.
That's better enough.
Using an abacus.
Just say the glint Lord British's eye.
Yeah.
But before we do that, shall we jump into the week's RPG news?
Well, if I'm standing in for Peter, I would say go on then.
Or do we have to? Must we?
Yeah, do we have to? Well, I did. So I know the cover story is that he's in Peru, but is he recovering okay from what happened?
Did you not hear what happened to Peter?
No. What did happen to Peter?
The paragliding accident.
Oh. Was that the one where he was trying to paraglide without an actual glider?
Exactly. He was trying to beat the world record from the, those people that jump out of things from orbit.
Right.
He was trying to beat the world record. So he decided to jump out of the International Space Station.
Without a glide. Well,
he's still whirling around up there.
We're still waiting for his entry. Yeah. It's either going to be in the South China Sea or he's going to get speared up top the Eiffel Tower. We're not sure yet.
One of those two things, yeah.
One of those two.
I think it's Jet Set Willie, not just Willie.
Right. Yeah, right. So the last I talked to him, he was super excited because he had found some theory on the internet that you could paraglide without actually the right equipment. So he was going to test that.
Mm-hmm. We'll find out in 2 weeks' time what happened.
He didn't hear that on this show, I hope.
No, because all of the news and talk here is nothing but the best and most refined of news and information.
Right, let's do some news. Let's do some actual news.
Let's do that.
Let's do some real news.
Real news!
Have either of you guys heard of the World of Farland?
No, but it makes me think of...
I'm thinking no.
It makes me think of a CRPG called Sword of Fargoal, but no, I'm not familiar with it.
So this has been a D&D setting that's been online for, I think, about 20 years now. And it's gone through, it's a third-party one, and it's gone through various different iterations of D&D, and I wouldn't be surprised if it existed offline through previous iterations. But I first came across it during the 3rd edition years. Then there was a 4th edition version. Then there was a 5th edition version. It's a dark D&D setting, and it's ruled by these evil lords that are based on the 7 deadly sins. So the atmosphere is, if you think like Lord of the Rings, but if they'd lost.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Kind of, yeah, so it's kind of like that. They've got a new hardcover supplement called Realms Under Shadow. And this embraces some Asian, African, and Indian mythology and cultures to add to the World of Farland.
Nice. Yeah, I'm not familiar. So this is, I'm guessing it's not a Kickstarter because it's not part of our favorite game in all the world. So is it already out? Is it coming?
It has released. 235 page. Yeah, he released it on Drive Through RPG, and I think it's on Amazon as well. 235 page, full colour. It's got 14 new races. It's got 15 new archetypes. It's tons and tons and tons of stuff in there. All with, all with, sort of Asian and African and Indian themes.
That's really interesting. I'm noticing more and more material coming out that is not only trying to get away from the standard medieval high fantasy of what I would call token-esque, but also trying to kind of explore other traditions of fantasy and horror or other settings. Kind of rolling
the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas.
Yeah, the Ozark Mountains. Of high Arkansas.
This looks fantastic, by the way. Just looking at it now.
Yeah,
some great cover art on the book.
I love the art. That cover's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, let me. What was it? It was Farland. What was the full name of it again?
Farland.
Realms
Under Shadow, Exotic Southern Lands. To get down to Dixie.
All right, very nice. Yeah. So is this Russ? Have you brought this up as something that you just think is interesting, or do you think that you would want to own this or use it?
I think I'll probably buy it. Yeah.
It does look nice.
I had a copy of this setting back in the 3rd edition days. I haven't had a 4th edition or 5th edition copy of it, so it might be time for me to update. Anyway, you mentioned Wendy's. Why don't you tell us why you mentioned Wendy's? I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast already knows why you mentioned Wendy's, but just in case there's one guy out there that does not know why you mentioned Wendy's, why, Shane, did you mention Wendy's?
Oh, well, actually, believe it or not, our tabletop newbie, Matt, mentioned it first.
Oh, but, I do apologize.
Yeah, Wendy's.
With my esoteric knowledge of fast food-related role-playing games. And
tabletop,
that's an area of expertise you never expected.
It's the fast food tabletop role-playing game. Yeah, it's just really cool, man. But do y'all have Wendy's in the UK? Okay,
or if there is one, I haven't seen one.
Okay, I remember. I mean, when I was there, of course, you had McDonald's and all that, but. So for those that may not know, Wendy's is a fast food chain, mainly in the States. I'm assuming it's other places, but it's ubiquitous here. And they have released a free D&D like tabletop role-playing game. And I've honestly been so busy, all I've been able to do is read about it. I haven't actually downloaded it and looked at it.
It's quite impressive.
That's what I've heard.
It's nearly 100 pages, so it's not a small thing. It's in PDF. If you go to New York Comic Con, you can get a hard copy as well, because they've launched it there.
Feast of Legends.
Yes.
Feast of Legends.
Yeah.
All right.
You have to fight McDonald's.
This thing is its own RPG. 75% of the book is an adventure, and then about 25% of the book is the rules with which to run that adventure. But basically, it's a standalone, it's its own system, brand new system, D&D-esque, but it's this brand new system. And it's made by Wendy's. So
I'm curious. Now I've heard the same thing, that it's surprisingly good. Given that it's like Wendy's put it out. But I'm curious. I wonder why they just didn't use the OGL and the SRD and do a 5e.
I guess they didn't feel they needed to. I don't know. I mean, they've got weird things in here. Like if you play it in the restaurant and you're eating Wendy's food, your characters get bonuses depending on what you've ordered from the menu.
I love it.
So there's a few gimmicks like that in there, and the whole thing is, it's kind of silly. It's kind of Wendy's themed,
but it's beautiful at the same time.
It's
absolutely beautiful.
It works. It's a full-fledged, well presented, good artwork, good layout. It's the full thing.
So are people playing this in Wendy's? Is that the goal, to get geeks into Wendy's?
I guess that is the goal. Yeah.
Wow. Well, there will be. I mean, I could see doing it just to be snarky, and go to Wendy's and play a Wendy's game. But it's really smart because it got a lot of news immediately. So I saw it pop up all over the place. It got a little bit of
pushback as well.
Did it really? I haven't seen
for two reasons. So there are two reasons it got pushback. Bear in mind, I'm pretty much completely unfamiliar with the Wendy's. But one of the reasons it got pushed back was they did not credit any of the creators in the book.
No.
When you think about it, it is an ad, really. It's a big 97-page ad.
Yeah.
You don't tend to credit creators on ads, but it's a good point. You should credit the creators. And some people had to dig to find out it was designed by a man called Matt Keck, Tony Marin, and others.
Oh. What was it? I've been watching a lot of found footage movies lately. So was this RPG like it was discovered in somebody's home by the authorities and nobody's actually seen the designers? They just had to dig up who they were.
Well, apparently the official line is it was written by Wendy, which I assume is the mascot of the restaurant. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So Dave Thomas, Dave Thomas was the guy who created Wendy's, and he named the franchise, and the logo of Wendy's is after his daughter Wendy.
Right. Okay.
So that's always been kind of the thing. So yeah, they may be trying to make her kind of a mascot more. Because they've over here in the States, Kentucky Fried Chicken has really gone crazy with the Colonel Sanders as a mascot. They've turned him into a very tongue-in-cheek kind of mascot. But anyway, back to Queen
Wendy.
Queen Wendy. So you're going on. So she's the Lord British of the new wave of tabletop role playing games. Is Queen Wendy?
Well, the new wave of tabletop fast food role playing games.
Yeah. Well, I still think this is super smart because they got a lot of advertising out of it. I mean, we're talking about it.
Well, they're not the only mainstream company doing this now. Do you remember Old Spice created a gentleman class for
the class.
Pathfinder,
yeah, the character class. Right.
It might have been Pathfinder. I can't remember.
I do remember that. I do remember when Old Spice made a character class and put it out there and got people talking.
And then there was the car company that did the D&D cartoon ad.
In was it Brazil?
Yeah, that was right,
amazing. Yeah. I think we talked about this when I helped on your 50th anniversary. I actually got feels when they made it home on that commercial. That commercial was well done.
It was very, very well done.
Yeah, it's very well done. A lot of love for the cartoon in there. I think it just goes to show that, role-playing games, which everyone usually, in the vernacular refers to as D&D. You want to play D&D? Yeah. What do you want to play? Pathfinder.
Yeah.
So, it just shows that it is a major cultural thing again. We've known that for a few years now, but the general culture, when you have Wendy's putting out a tabletop role-playing game.
It helps that it's cool to be a geek these days. It's fine to watch Marvel movies in the cinema these days, whereas, 20 years ago, that would have been a different situation entirely.
So what I think will be interesting, because I think this will happen, I think in the future they'll be interviewing people or you'll be talking to people and it'll be like 10 or 20 years from now. Well, how did you get into role-playing games? Well, like Wendy's put this thing out. Yeah. Wendy's put this thing out and it hooked me, so it's interesting. I think it's really neat that they did it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right, let's move on with the news anyway. Let's see what else we've got. Right, Ulisses North America has just bought Space 1889.
Oh.
That is a steampunk sci-fi Victorian themed space setting. If you're not familiar with it, it was created by a guy called Frank Chadwick, published by Game Designers Workshop back in the 80s. And was in print until the early 90s. Clockwork Publishing, the most recent company to own it, went bankrupt earlier this year, but Ulisses North America stepped forward and picked up the license with the intention of relaunching the game.
So Space 1889 is one of those games that holds like a hallowed...
Do talk about it in here.
Like space...
Excellent.
Yeah, I think there's a computer... It was either influenced or...
1990s RPG called Space 1889 by Paragon.
Yeah, for a computer RPG. This book has everything, folks. But Space 1889 is actually one of those games that holds this like special place in my memory, even though I never played it.
Nah, me neither.
Because I would go to this this hobby shop. Like back in the day, if you wanted to get anything that wasn't like D&D or Star Frontiers or something that you would find at a bookstore, like TSR, you had to go to hobby shops or specialty stores. And I used to go to this hobby shop, and it would have all these crazy RPGs and RPG supplements. And I remember seeing Space 1889, and I was like, wow, that looks so crazy. And it just captured my imagination as to what that could be. So even though I've never actually played it, I remember clear as a bell that game from, way back in the 80s. And it comes up every now and then. So how many editions has it had now? Do we know what this one is?
That is not a thing that I know. Only one or two, I think. I don't think it said a lot.
Okay.
Because
I just remember
because it wasn't in print for long. It was only in print for like 3 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just seems so crazy, especially when my young brain had only been feasting on D&D and Villains and Vigilantes. And then I saw that and I was like, what is that? So very vivid memory.
In the year 1870, American inventor Thomas Edison paved the way to the stars. That's a pretty cool conceit, really.
Yeah, basically.
It's like Spelljammer without the mind flayers.
Yeah, I guess.
Victorian era science fiction.
Yeah.
There was a Doctor Who episode about 2 or 3 years ago which had Victorians on Mars.
And this is a news item that we could talk about as well if you want to. So,
I think I've got something here. TTTTRPG.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of T's.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's on GitHub.
What the heck am I looking at here?
Okay, yeah, okay. What is this then, Shane? Explain yourself,
this
sir.
Is a user named P. Martinoli on GitHub has added to GitHub this PDF that is very intricate, and it shows the timeline of tabletop RPGs.
Right.
So, how like you see these family trees or these very scholarly where they're trying to reconstruct family histories or the history of empires or something like that. Genealogies. This is his attempt, and it's very, very intricate at a timeline of tabletop RPGs, and it's as
really
Russ often
have to zoom in on that thing.
Yeah, you got to zoom in on this thing.
It goes back to 1860, I see.
Yeah, that's probably the Little Wars or whatever that H.G. Wells wrote, some sort of
Kriegspiel.
Yeah, some sort of tabletop wargaming. But yeah, it's and as Russ likes to say a lot, he'll make a joke out of the fact that you're trying to visually describe something on an audio podcast. But, I recommend we put this in the show notes and let people check it out for themselves.
I'm just checking to see if my game is on there. I can't see it.
Well, if it's not, then it's incomplete and completely invalid.
Yeah, this should probably be interactive somehow to make this easier to... what's that? Yeah. Prezi would be good for this.
Can I search this? Is it possible?
Well, it's in PDF, I downloaded it in PDF.
No, I don't believe my game is on that.
Well, then they're obviously...
no, not like What's Old is New has not been included.
Well, this entire thing is invalid. But yeah, you look through here, he's including individual modules.
Yeah.
that may have impacted things like he's including editions of role-playing games. He's including role-playing games. So I had one other news item here very briefly, and it kind of combines the worlds of tabletop and computer role-playing game. And Russ, I know you were personally interested in this game, Solasta, Crown of the Magister, which is the 5th edition. It's an adaptation implementation of the 5e game system, not the D&D IP, but the SRD.
So upset that I can't play the free demo they've got on Steam because I have a Mac.
Well, it's good.
I have heard it's good. Heard it's good.
Not to rub salt, but it's very good. And the campaign ended yesterday, and they raised €243,855 out of a goal of, I can't remember what their goal was less. Their goal was €180,000.
That's, to you or I, that's a lot of money.
Full-on self-frame animation there.
To make a video game, it doesn't sound that much.
Well, the thing with this is I actually interviewed them. I've got two of the team came on my show 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I interviewed them. The game engine is pretty much already done before they ever started the Kickstarter. All of the money they raised was to add more content and classes and bells and whistles and polish to the game. Now, if they didn't already have the game engine done, then yes, that wouldn't be that much. So that's just shy of $270,000 US dollars. But what's interesting about this is I have played the demo, and it's a very good implementation of 5e. And it also has verticality.
That's the thing that really attracts me to it.
The verticality is neat because you climb up and down in addition to moving horizontally.
Well, I saw in some
dungeon.
of the screenshots you had spiders moving along the walls rather than the floor.
Right, and that wasn't just an animation. Where they were on the wall could affect combat. So, and then also something very exciting that most CRPGs run screaming from. This one will allow you to fly. So if you have the flight spell or fly spell, you can fly and you can take advantage of that verticality.
It's turn-based, though,
so
isn't it? Is it?
It is.
So if you just stop flying in midair, and does that?
Then you'll be just there until your next turn. Yeah. Just like you were playing tabletop. Okay. And this game has a very strong tabletop connection because the Kickstarter also included all of the setting and information you needed to basically play their implementation. Or they have their own world, their own IP that's on top of the 5e game engine. And it's, so you also, certain levels of pledging also get the tabletop RPG materials. So, anyway.
Cool. Well, I have one last piece of news, and then we can move on.
Yes, sir.
My last piece of news is D&T related. It is from Unearthed Arcana, which seems to be coming out at a rapid clip at the moment. They had about 6 months off, and they've had 3 or 4 of those in the last month or two. And this latest Unearthed Arcana has, let's have a look, new Cleric, Druid, and Wizard options. So we've got the Twilight Domain for the Cleric, the Circle of Wildfire for the Druid, and the Onomancy, the Magic of True Names for the Wizard.
Oh, I'd be curious about that. The true name thing sounds really interesting because in a lot of fantasy fiction that deals with magic and name, like Earthsea, for example.
Yes, that's what I identify true name magic with.
Yeah.
What was that? What was the Belgariad stuff? Did they do that too? Or am I misremembering?
The Belgariad had the will in the way.
Am I misremembering that?
I don't remember naming being important to the Belgariad, but it's been years since I read that. Yeah. But I remember they had the will in the way, but then they also had sorcery, which was a separate thing, like, spirit summoning and that sort of thing. So they had a couple of different things. But yeah, the naming of things, Earthsea, obviously, which, I mean, it's crucial to Earthsea, which is amazing. I didn't read Wizard of Earthsea till within the past year, and that's some really good stuff.
I haven't read Earthsea since I was a kid.
It was like, it's prose, but it's almost poetic. It's just really, really good. And then also, of course, Patrick Rothfuss, he has a couple different types of magic. He has a magic that's almost like engineering, but then he also has, the name of things, and things get really, really deep and powerful when you get into the name of things. So, but anyway, that sounds really cool. So Unearthed Arcana, I guess they were kind of stopped up, and then they took a creative laxative, and it's just, here it comes.
I guess so. I don't know if it has something to do with, because Mike Merles, I think, wrote quite a lot of these, and he has pretty much been AWOL for the last 6 months, certainly on social media. I think maybe he's been moved into a different, I don't know what he's doing.
I didn't even notice that.
You never see him around anymore.
I didn't even notice that.
I'm wondering if it's mainly a staffing issue.
It could be. I don't know.
Don't know either.
Maybe. Yeah, I didn't even notice.
Shane. I have a question to ask you.
Russ. Yes.
Do you know what time it is?
It's time to play our favorite game. It's time to play the game. Our favorite game in all the world. Guess the Kickstarter from just the name.
Well, I have to, since Peter's not here, I'll do it for him. All right, do I get to be the top hat?
That joke just...
Matt, you could be the race car.
Our favourite game in all the world is the game where I read out the name of the Kickstarter and you have to guess what it is from just the name. We've got two of you. If you want to do two each, does that sound good? Are you familiar with the game at all, Matt, or is this a brand new experience for you?
Brand new.
You will either love it or hate it. One of those two things. Most likely the latter.
Yes, and it's very difficult concept.
Does it involve throwing Twinkies at me? 'Cause that would be
that'd be good.
Pretty
no,
cool.
But we might add that Twinkies shaped like rats. They do that at Halloween. Twinkies.
Did you just come up with that concept?
Yeah, and Russ is over here dying because he's trying to move us on.
The clock is ticking, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yes. So our favourite game in the world, just quickly to tell you how it works, man. I read out the name of a Kickstarter, and you simply have to guess what that Kickstarter is just from the name. Let's have you start, shall we, Shane?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, are you ready?
Yes.
What is Deviant the Renegades?
Well, so the naming sounds White Wolfish, but I'm pretty sure that this is not going to be a White Wolf World of Darkness product.
This is my poker face. I give nothing away.
Well, I don't, because Deviant the Renegades doesn't sound paranormal or supernatural, so it doesn't sound like a White Wolf kind of thing. I think that it is a game where you're like an anti-hero or a villain even, or either that or it's kind of punk where you're fighting the system. So even though you're a deviant and a renegade, your rebellion, is either leads to your freedom, or just tries to hold out against some sort of oppressive or evil environment. And just to give a nod to, Peter's usual answers, it's powered by the apocalypse.
So, there's good news and bad news.
Yeah.
You had it right, and then you talked your way out of it.
We're completely
because
away
it
from
is
it.
a storytelling system game.
Oh my goodness! All right.
If you'd stuck with your guns there, you'd have scored full points.
Oh no! All right.
So what this is the victims of experiments band together to bring down the monolithic organizations that twisted and warped them.
Wow. Wow. You know why I got away from World of Darkness? One, because I hadn't heard any announcements. And two, every time World of Darkness does something, the something is never plural. Right?
Vampire the Masquerade. Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, nah, somebody's playing off of that, but it's not World of Darkness.
So this is Chronicles of Darkness rather than World of... I'm not actually sure which is which. One of them is Onyx Path, and one of them's White Wolf, now Modifius, isn't it?
I'm not sure,
I'm not sure which is which, but they're two different branches.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, so, okay.
So I will give you 5 points out of 12 for that.
Yay!
So deviant.
All right, 5 out of 12.
Okay, then.
Right.
So, next, it is Matt's turn. Okay.
Oh.
All right, then. This is one word. You're going to have to get this from one word. What is
God.
capers? CAPERS.
Capers.
And,
Sounds like a sleuthing game.
And Matt, just to help, there's not a whole lot of food or restaurant-based RPGs out there.
Whoa, capers. Yeah, it sounds like some sort of detective game. Maybe a Victorian.
Not bad. Close.
Or maybe a crime game.
It's more.
You want to take it?
Yeah, it's more super spies rather than detectives. But I don't think you're not far off.
Super spies.
1960s during the Cold War.
Yeah.
Capers.
This is very cartoony super spies. We've got scientists crafting gadgets to help sexy super spies battle super villains with superpowers. So it's
Are there fembots?
I was thinking either
am
that
going
or
to
some
guess,
kind of gourmet chef game.
I'm going to guess that there
Like
are
a Gordon Ramsay game.
Gordon Ramsay game.
There's no capers!
What's going to happen now is every celebrity chef is going to release their own RPG.
Yeah, RPG. Yeah. Next thing you know, Guy Ferrari or whatever is going to have an RPG. So, all right.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you the name of this one, but I'm not going to include this as part of the game because it's really obvious what it is. But I just love the name. Harold the Halfling's Herbology Handbook. Fantastic Flora.
Oh my goodness! So is that for me?
I know because this isn't part of the game. I just it's in the list, but
right.
It's too easy to guess for the game.
That is a great name for a source book.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I have a feeling that one might do really well in Colorado and California right now.
With the capers.
So what score did Matt get?
And
let's handicap Matt
I will
because he's not used to this.
Yeah, I'm going to give him +1 points because it's his first time. So I'm going to give him, instead of 50 out of 100, I'm going to give him 51 out of 100.
Very good.
So he's way ahead of you at the moment. He's got 51 and you had
5.
5. Because catching up to do
see how this works, Matt.
Yeah.
If it's any comfort, one time Peter scored -1 million points, so you're way ahead on that front.
Well, I thought you had to adjust that because if it was -1 million, a black hole was going to open
something
or
like
something.
that.
Yeah, I think you had to adjust it down by 1.
I get to roll twice.
Yeah, you get advantage.
All right, the next one is for you, Shane.
Okay.
Plunderlings. Do you want me to spell it?
No, I'm assuming it's plunder with lings added on top of it.
That is correct.
So I'm getting either a pirate vibe or young adventurers in a fantasy RPG vibe. So I'm going to go with young adventurers in a fantasy RPG vibe. So it's a fantasy RPG for kids. Something aimed at younger kids, and they are actually the plunderlings. That's the name for the adventurers in that.
We are the plunderlings.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that since it's for kids, that it's somehow going to be D6 based and rules light, and that is my answer.
Right. I have to make a confession here. This one is a little bit of a cheat because it's not actually an RPG. It's just kind of related.
Okay. It's a source book. It's a source book or
Not
something.
Even that.
I was going to say, you just threw a name out there and you just created it.
It's actually an action figure.
Oh, okay.
Which, to be fair, you were never going to get that, especially when you were told at the start of the game that they were RPGs.
The point isn't to actually get right answers. The point is for the chaos of it all.
These action figures, they basically look exact. Like the Paizo Pathfinder goblins.
Yes.
With the big wide grins and teeth and stuff.
Right.
So they look exactly like that, but they're not licensed or related to Pathfinder in any way. So they're kind of adjacent. Pathfinder adjacent, I guess. Yeah. So these are pirate...
They're perfect.
Goblin action figures.
By Lone Coconut. That's the name of the company.
They're about 4 inches tall,
like a little bit.
25 points of articulation, and they've got 12 different figures.
Yeah. I like that.
They're like a mashup of Ninja Turtles and the Gremlins.
Yeah, they do. But I do like that. I think they're named well because, I immediately thought of both pirates and some sort of fantasy RPG thing. So it's kind of a shade on that one. Yeah, it's kind of a mash of that. You've got little goblins that are like pirates. So I think that's pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that wasn't entirely fair, was it? But still,
well, it's okay. It doesn't have to be fair. As long as it makes for good podcasts, exactly. It doesn't have to be fair. Yeah. Okay. And they got 10 days to go as of today.
Right, final one. And who's in the lead at the moment? I think Matt, you're still in the lead.
I don't even know what points I got
for that one. Well, because it wasn't fair, I will give you a C-.
Okay, so I have 5 points plus C-.
Plus a C-. Okay then, Matt, the last one.
Final game is simply called Red.
All right, this is Word Scouts, but the word is spelled W-Y-R-D, and it's all one word. Word Scouts.
So, like weird.
Weird, yeah. Is that how you say that?
Weird.
Yeah, I think that's a way of spelling weird.
Oh, okay.
Like
weird
an old English way or something.
Weird.
Wordy, it's weirdy.
Weird Scouts.
Scouts. Weird Scouts. What is weird? It's like a Celtic thing, right? Or
I guess.
I think it's just old English.
Does it go back to like Beowulf and old?
Yeah, I think so.
Old Anglo-Saxon.
These days, I think it's kind of used just to... Anyway, I'm not going to help you. It's on you, buddy.
I don't know what to make of that one.
The Weird Scouts Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse.
Well, put it this way. All you have to do is not score negative 46 points, and you'll win.
It's kind of hard to tell if that's something. It could be something modern related. Or something set in like a traditional fantasy setting.
I mean, this one is RPG related. This one isn't. This one isn't a cheat.
That's not an action figure.
It's not an action figure.
Weird Scouts. I'm coming up with, I guess, characters that are based on the old. I guess I'll go maybe old Celtic mythology.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, this is Fae mythology, which is pretty much the same thing, I guess, is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, Fae is pretty old. So
this is, it was originally called Scouts of the Weirdwood Forest. Then halfway through the campaign, they changed it to Weird Scouts. And it's a tabletop RPG about magical scouts in an enchanted wood.
Are we talking about Boy Scouts?
No, I think like scouts as
in... they're like little... I'm looking at the page. It's they're like little adventurers.
It's like the Scouts.
No, it's like... I guessed a couple...
Rangers, isn't it?
Like Rangers, yeah, like Scouts. Cub Scouts and brownies and stuff.
Yeah, well, it says it's a storytelling adventure game about modern magical kids who spend their weekends exploring an enchanted woodland realm filled with danger, myth, and fairy tales.
Oh, I'm wrong. They are scouts because they have like the little...
She's even got the little badge sash.
Yeah, as we say, they are like scouts. Okay. They're like, because they get the merit badges and stuff. Yeah, you're
merit badges. That's what I was trying to remember.
Oh, yes. It does mention merit badges. Yeah.
This is an awesome concept.
In that case, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you, Shane, because Matt has nailed it. And he's just
beginner's
scored
luck.
1,000 points. Which means he's got
beginner's luck. Do I get a merit badge?
Yeah, beginner's luck.
Badge?
Yeah, you get a merit badge.
And a merit badge, 1,051 points and a merit badge.
What's funny is this is similar, whatever I just guessed a while ago, because it says it's a rules light storytelling adventure game. It's obviously aimed at younger players. Yeah. Anyway.
I wonder if this is connected to the official Scouts.
I don't think
No, I don't think so. No. It would have, they'd probably tout that immediately. Yeah. And the reason it's called Weird Scouts is because you explore the weird wood, which they says literally means the weird wood. So
Right, anyway, that is the end of our favourite game in all the world. Matt is the winner, and we have more things to do.
yay, Matt. Congratulations. Hey, Simon.
Oh, hey, Rick.
Wait, is that the new computer RPG you've been wanting to get? The ultimate pool of might and wizardry?
Oh, yeah, baby.
Wait, the one that promises to be completely different and unique and do new things and freshen up the entire genre?
The very same. Just loaded it up today. Comes on 3 floppies, mate. Good thing my folks got me that second disc drive for Christmas. Told you that was going to end up being a necessity.
Wow.
Loving this game. Best experience ever. I'm ready to buy the sequel if they make one, and just look at those graphics. I think there's at least 4 colours in the mix.
Wow. Wait, is that?
Yep, 6 characters in my adventuring party. You get to create them all yourself. Name my fighter Conan and my wizard Raceland, naturally.
And Super Fingers is...
My thief, obviously.
Oh, obviously, yeah. Oh, nice. It's got Larry Easley art on the box cover. Barbarian chick, I love it. Man, she's really skewering that rat, isn't she? Look at all those rats.
Yeah, I wish I had that as a poster. There's a cloth map of the mysterious realms and a little metal sword in the box.
Nice.
And look, every spell from the pen and paper version is in the game. They've got individual animations even.
Man, this game is amazing. I gotta get it.
Yep, I'm starting over to play it again as soon as I'm finished. Hold on, got a random encounter starting.
Kobolds. Nice. Get those little dog dudes.
I keep telling you, they're actually lizard people.
Yeah. Ooh. Man, I love the animations in the monster portrait.
Yeah, this game sets the new standard in computerized dungeon crawls, like gold in a box.
Huh. So how long have you been playing in this dungeon?
Pretty much the whole game so far, other than getting to town and being sent here by the mayor to prove ourselves.
Ooh, right. So, how many rats have you killed by now?
Now you mention it, none.
What?
Yeah, I fought spiders, kobolds, skeletons, some goblins, and an orc, even a slime, but no rats.
I thought this game was supposed to be amazing.
Well, I mean, look at the list of features on the back of the box. It's the Ferrari of computer RPGs, mate. Look, check this out. Exploring these corridors is smooth. Plus, there's an auto mapper, and it adds stuff for the newest pen and paper edition.
I mean, that's all well and good, but where are the rats? Even the cover shows rats.
I haven't seen one yet.
That's false advertising is what that is.
I do enjoy annihilating rats, especially in cellars.
Who doesn't? It's practically the reason we play these games.
You know, I'd really like to have to put my cleric's mace to good use on one of those cheese-eating plague bags by now.
What a ripoff.
A good, satisfying rat smashing is where it's at, when you come down to it. You see those beady little eyes and those teeth, and it's like you just can't hold yourself back from unleashing the carnage.
Everything else is just kind of supporting material.
Yeah, the dungeon's just, the atmosphere. Like a nice restaurant. What we're really here for
is to beat the brains out of rats with a club.
Right. And I haven't seen a rat in this sorry excuse for a game yet.
This game is terrible. I can't believe they even shipped it in this state.
Total rubbish. I'm getting my money back.
They should be ashamed for even selling it to you in the first place.
In fact, I'm loading up a proper game with proper rats in proper cellars.
Now you're talking. Psh, Ferrari of computer RPGs. And not even a single solitary plague-infested rodent under the hood.
Deleted. Let's never speak of it again. RatQuest 5, Cellars of the Rat Lord, coming right up. I have a bone to pick with you guys because I've scoured this book and I can find no reference whatsoever to RatQuest 5, The Cellars of the Rat Lord. What's going on?
Yeah.
No, it's just so well known. It's not even worth. We didn't want to just cover redundant material.
You've kind of forced our hand, but we did that on purpose. And we're about to do a Kickstarter, and we're going to do an entire volume. This is 600 pages. It's going to be like a 1,200 page volume on the Rat Quest series.
The infamous Rat Quest series.
Yeah, there was so much material.
The mace. I think you nailed that part too, because that's the
just
mace.
getting that mace in there. Yeah, good smashing. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
when we were writing the book and researching the book, there was so much material that to mention it all without exploring the full story of the Rat Quest series would have been an insult.
That's because we're going to do a whole book just on the Rat Quest series.
Right. So,
Do you know,
that's coming.
There is at least one listener out there who actually believes that's true.
There probably is a Rat Quest.
People think it's Dragon Quest, but they don't realize that's a localization.
Yeah, what happened was Dragon Quest actually started in America, and it was localized over in Japan as Dragon Quest, and then relocalized back over here.
It's a common misconception.
Yeah, it's totally common. Yeah.
So this book, let's try and steer us back on topic.
Yes, we have 30 minutes.
So this 600-page book. All of us are sitting here clutching shiny copies of this book in our hands here.
Yes, available on Amazon.
This actually
and
makes
other
me feel
fine
a little
booksellers.
ashamed. I have to be honest. I thought I was a bit of a geek. I would say that at least 75% of the games that you mention in this book I've never heard of.
Well, I think that just goes to show that every genre of geekdom has a deep rabbit hole that, like, I still discover stuff about tabletop role-playing games I never knew. And I consider myself really well-versed in that. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to give a quick history of this book. Start
with its original status as a tree.
As a tree.
And how it came to be a book in your hands and every step along that way.
Well, first there was nothing.
Well, the game is cuneiform.
Yeah, and then out of nothing. And then out of nothing came something.
Papyrus.
And the something formed into planets. So Matt, and I mean, I can't overstress. I was pleased to come along for the ride as a co-author on the second edition. But this is Matt. I mean, this is Matt's baby. It's his passion. It's in a lot of ways, his career. So the name of the book is Dungeons and Desktops, The History of Computer Role-Playing Games, second edition. Which we
wanted to call it Advanced Dungeons and Desktops.
We did talk to the publisher about calling it Advanced Dungeons and Desktops.
Why didn't you?
At first the publisher said yes, and then they reversed because I think that they didn't want to confuse people on that it was the second edition of another book. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, at first that was going to be the name of it. So, but anyway, so the first edition of the book came out a little over 10 years ago. Matt wrote it. And that is, Matt is literally, there's a big picture of a rat in there.
That is a rat. I can confirm that is a rat.
Is literally a professor who teaches, English, rhetoric, and video games. So he's literally a video game professor at a university in Minnesota.
Oh.
St. Paul, Minnesota. I don't want to get any rivalry going there.
Wars have been fought over less.
Yeah, fought over less. And so he wrote the first edition of the book about 10 years ago. And he also has anybody that's interested in game development, computer RPGs, that sort of thing. He has a channel on YouTube called Matt Chat. Oh, yeah. And it's one of the most popular types of channels for what he does. I mean, it's that's how I met Matt. Was
millions upon millions of people, rats have been slaughtered.
They have with glee, and a lot of times Matt will interview the developers. I mean, everybody from Richard Garriott, Lord British himself, down to Brian Fargo, some of the big names, Chris Avallone. Chris Avallone wrote
Neil Halford.
Yeah, Neil Halford. Yeah, Chris Avallone actually wrote the introduction for this book. Chris Avallone is the person who wrote Planescape Torment, which is one of the most highly regarded. He also wrote Knights of the Old Republic 2 and several other games, several other well-known games. He's super highly regarded in the computer role-playing game industry. So he wrote this about 10 years, the first edition about 10 years ago. It was extremely popular. everybody that's into computer role-playing games, the way that we're into tabletop role-playing games, pretty much owns a copy of the book. And it's engaging but scholarly at the same time. And then a couple of years ago, or about a year or two ago, Matt and I were talking about doing a second edition. Because the first edition had some revisions that it needed. Plus, we wanted to do color screenshots because the first edition, Matt was never happy with the quality of the screenshots, and they were all black and white, and some of them were kind of hard to see. And then also, in between Matt Wright, he actually ended the first edition 10 years ago on a somewhat negative note, where he's like, "Well, we're done. The time of computer role playing games is pretty much over," and then. Yeah. We had the Kickstarter renaissance, and it's almost a second golden age in some ways. I'm not saying that the games we're getting, are equaling the original golden age, but we're getting some darn good computer role-playing games in the past several years, and we're getting a lot of them. So, and so there's like 200 pages of extra content in this book. There's revisions. There's all color screenshots. If you're into computer role-playing games or even the history of computer games at all, this is a fantastic book.
So I've got a question. How would you define a computer role-playing game? What qualities does a computer game have to be considered a computer role-playing game?
I'm going to let Matt answer most of that, but I'll just say that every time that question comes up, it's like a sphere of annihilation, and we all disappear into a black hole of debate.
But the reason I asked because I was trying to think what was my first one, and then I thought, is that game actually one? Because I immediately thought, do you remember those text adventure? Well, of course you do. Those text adventure games, and there was The Hobbit, and you had to go north, get key, use key on door, that sort of stuff. That I would have said was my first, but I don't know if that does that.
Zork and Colossal Cave come up a lot.
Does that qualify as a computer role playing game?
Not to me, it doesn't.
I don't believe so either. There has to be some sort of leveling up, some sort of progression. For me, a computer role playing game simulates as close as possible a tabletop role playing game when you don't have your friends around.
So it has to have, it has to have a character with stats. Is that?
Now, see, I think the tabletop is a pretty good analogy here because I've played D&D before where there's nobody ever rolls a die the whole session, right? It's just strictly role playing, and that to me is kind of like those Zork games, which I don't even. Would you guys consider that to be? This is might be a controversial question, but if nobody ever rolls a die, is that role playing?
It is.
It's about ROLE playing, not ROLL playing. So
or is that like a little departure, a little break, a little?
Yeah, but I mean, in order to be a role playing game,
there are some role playing games that don't involve dice.
Right, you've got to have some sort of.
But do you consider those true role playing games?
I am not. You are not going to get me to sit here on this podcast and.
Well, I'd say that's kind of the same thing we're talking about here.
Yeah, they're really role playing games, but they're not the type of role playing games that I think of as a role playing game.
Yeah, if I say I'm going to come up with a tabletop role playing game, there's not going to be any dice, there's not going to be any levels, there's not going to be any classes. At some point you're like, well, you're not even talking about a role playing game.
One of my favourite role playing games is Dread, which is a horror role playing game, and the entire resolution mechanic of that is a Jenga tower. So what happens is there's no dice, you have no stats for your character or anything, you just describe your character, you answer some questions about your character, and that's it. And every time you do something where, the outcome of it might be in doubt, the way you determine whether or not it happens, whether or not it works, is you take a block out of the Jenga tower. And obviously as the game progresses, that gets more and more tense. And because it's a horror role-playing game, that feeds directly into that tension. And it's absolutely perfect. But there's no dice, there's no stats, and I still consider that a role-playing game.
Yeah, I mean, that's as long as there's some sort of mechanic, some sort of underlying game.
That's a random factor.
Yeah, as long as there's a game engine, then it's a role-playing game. But if it's just, let's sit around the table and storytell with no mechanic or underlying game system at all, then that's not a role-playing game.
Well, that's role-playing, but it's not a game, I suppose.
Right, yeah, exactly, right, yeah.
Well, yeah, the terminology's fuzzy.
Yeah.
I mean, we need better terms for all this stuff. But I mean, for me, if there's no way to level up or develop a skill.
It's not really.
That to me is another issue.
Character advancement is a
well, we could call
it's not enough just to have random stuff. I mean, you have to have some kind of way to level up and develop a character.
Right, and that's that same debate we're having now about tabletop role-playing games is a big debate in the computer role-playing game industry or among game players, like what's a role-playing game and what isn't. And Matt does spend some time at the beginning of the book establishing, for the purposes of this book, this is a role-playing game. But there's actually, every passion, every fandom has those hot button issues that can really lead to a debate. And see, also you have the difference between Western CRPGs and Eastern CRPGs, Japanese CRPGs, which are quite different in a lot of ways. And in this book, Dungeons & Desktop's Complete History of Computer Role-Playing Games, 2nd edition, does go into the Japanese Eastern role-playing games a little bit, but it's mainly from a Western perspective.
I think my experience of those starts and ends with Final Fantasy VII.
Right, which is one of that's one of the most highly regarded, Japanese role-playing games. In fact, it's being redone. It's getting a remake.
Oh yeah, I heard that.
Remastered. Yeah. So, but for the purposes of like the book, like every genre of game or whatever has outliers, on either end that like, technically they're still a computer role-playing game, but they're experimental or they're doing things quite differently. Same thing with tabletop role-playing games. Some of your Kickstarters over the past few podcast episodes have been like break Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So you've had these weird concepts in tabletop role-playing games. But for the most part, we're talking about games that have either an adventurer or a party of adventurers, and you're adventuring around, you're killing stuff, you're getting loot, and you're leveling up, getting more powerful, and some of them have amazing stories, some of them don't.
I found the definition in the book.
All right, let's hit it. Yeah, let's hit
the
it.
official definition.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is on 7. Looks like Shane wants to fall. So in this book, what primarily distinguishes CRPGs from other genres is their statistical-based role-playing systems. CRPG designers rely on statistical calculation rather than physical manipulation for the bulk of their gameplay mechanics. In other words, they are more about statistical reasoning than facility with a mouse, joystick, or game controller. And then we add after that the players control a character or a small group rather than an army.
Right.
Distinguish them from the strategy game.
I think that's fair enough. I mean, for me, like I said, and I come back to, I think I might tell this story in the book. I know I wrote an essay talking about the first time I got really excited by a computer role-playing game. And I had played Ultima 1, I think, all the way through. And I enjoyed it.
Wow. And
it was fun, but it didn't like, put hooks into my brain and like explode, like, oh, this is amazing. It was fun. It was cool. But the first time I was, in fact, Matt, you've had him on your show. My friend Johnny Wood, who is a game developer and works on Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons and Dragons Online and those sort of things. When I was in high school, I saw him playing Pool of Radiance, the first gold box SSI game based on Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And it blew my mind because I was like, wait, this is D&D. This is D&D I can play on the computer when nobody's around. Because, I mean, back in the 80s, if you weren't with your D&D playing friends, you weren't playing D&D. There was no Roll20. There was no, you could play, there was like some, like Lone Wolf single player books or whatever you could do. But there wasn't, you couldn't really get that experience. And Pool of Radiance blew me away. I'm like, I can play D&D.
Yeah, I remember it
when I'm by myself.
Perfect for somebody like me, just a kid growing up in the country with nobody to play
D&D
with.
Yeah, and you didn't even have any tabletop role-playing gaming background, and you got sucked into computer role-playing games. So that was when you were growing up, the expression of tabletop role-playing games of D&D that you played was all on the computer. That was your reference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, see, for me, I grew up equally. Like, I had tabletop role-playing games, and I had computer role-playing games, and they were equal Well, I was probably more of a tabletop role-playing game guy, but I loved them both.
Yeah, and I think it says something for those gold box games, how close they were. Even as somebody who never played the D&D second edition tabletop, I can get together with a group of guys who did, and we're just talking
And you
like
basically know what they're talking about. Yeah.
I know everything they're talking about, and they would probably never even know.
Exactly.
Right.
This guy's never even played it.
How many of those were there? There was a few of them, weren't there? I remember Pool of Radiance.
There was Pool of Radiance.
Oh, there's a whole...
There was Curse of
the Azure Bond, Secret of the Silver Blades, and you got spin-offs, you got Dragonlance.
Books as well. These were TSR-produced fantasy novels also.
Right. Well, they were set in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, some of them are based on books, and then some of the books are based on games.
Yeah, they did novelize some of the games. There's because I know the majority of the listeners are tabletop role-playing gamers. There's an era of computer role-playing games that's sort of considered a golden age. And even though Ultima was around and Wizardry was around and Might and Magic, I'm not sure when Might and Magic came along. In my mind, the real...
kind of came in at the tail end.
The games that brought in a lot of people that weren't normally playing computer role-playing games were the gold box games from SSI, which was Strategic Simulations, I think, Incorporated Industries, something like that.
Yeah.
SSI.
Jim
and
Ward
TSR.
actually wrote an article on my site about it.
Yeah, those guys have been doing
It's
games.
coming. It's the next one.
Computer games based on, like Computer Bismarck, I think.
Right.
Was one of theirs. And,
yeah, SSI.
But they were the perfect people to get the license.
They did a great adaptation of the Pool of Radiance is basically first edition AD&D, although I think it uses the Thaco from second edition, if I remember right. It's a little fuzzy, but it's basically...
You say Thaco?
Yeah, that's how Thaco. Lego,
Taco.
Thaco my Lego. I don't know. Anyway, but anyway, so it was, so you had these gold box games. And when you hear, like, the average tabletop role player may not know what we're talking about, but when a computer role playing game fan talks about the gold box games.
Yeah, I think you'll find,
like
I think most tabletop gamers know that too. Yeah.
No, the gold box?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're hearkening back to back when things were good, and you go back and play them now and they have their flaws, but they're still, like, I'm playing Pool of Radiance.
Those boxes were made of actual
all
gold.
All of the TSR related stuff was good. I mean, when you go on to Baldur's Gate and all that lot as well, it's still really good. They're really great games, those ones.
Yeah, but if you go before the gold box games, it sucks. I mean, that's when you get the Atari cartridge.
Yeah, no, you had the Intellivision.
Dungeons and Dragons.
I've actually got
the Intellivision
I've got
was not
the
so bad.
Intellivision over here. Hold on.
One of them is not so bad, but still just really crude compared to the gold box.
Look, here's
Treasures of Tarman or something.
There's the Intellivision.
Treasure of Tarman.
Yeah, there was actually two
game.
Intellivision D&D games.
Oh, you got them both.
Yeah,
wow,
and they were basically just little. They were really action RPGs before that was really a term. And then, here you go, Russ. I don't know if did you ever use this back in the day? The Dungeon Master's Assistant.
No, I did not.
Yeah, that was from SSI. That was you've got the same thing there, Matt. The Intellivision. So
I can display this somewhere.
Anyway, so SSI they did these gold box games, and they had a 4-game series that started with Pool of Radiance that was set in the Forgotten Realms. It started with Pool of Radiance, went through Curse of the Azure Bond, Secret of the Silver Blades, into a Pool of Darkness. Then you had a 3-game series set in Krynn, Champions of Krynn, etc.
Yeah.
And you had a few
Death Knights
of Krynn. And you had some other ones. They did like a Buck Rogers.
I never played Death Knights of Krynn, so there's more than one Death Knight, is there?
There's 3.
3 Death Knights?
I'm blanking on the third one.
The whole point of Krynn was that Lord Soth was the only Death Knight.
If I remember right, and my memory's fuzzy, it's almost like saying Dungeons and Dragons, but you may only ever run into one dragon. So,
if only there was a book we could.
Yeah, if only there was a book we can consult. And now eventually SSI, as with all good things, started pumping out crap to keep the money coming in. And eventually the era of the gold box ended. And then
Dark Queen.
Now, if we're talking about just D&D related products, D&D related computer role-playing games, then yes, the next big thing was Baldur's Gate, which was a real-time with pause, which I say with grudging acceptance, adaptation of the second edition rule set. And a lot of people love Baldur's Gate. I don't dislike Baldur's Gate. I like it a lot, but it doesn't have that sweet spot in my heart like it does so many other people. And then after that, of course, you had Neverwinter Nights.
And Neverwinter Nights is the one. Neverwinter Nights 1 is the one that I think has the sweet spot for me. I don't know why that coincided with a whole bunch of stuff for me. And I really got into the sort of modding side of it, creating your own adventures. And
oh, sure. That's what it was known for.
That was its strength.
That was something I did for about 2 years. I just spent so much time running this little online worlds using Neverwinter Nights 1. And yeah, that's my...
Interesting thing about both those games is that it's not the original campaigns were not as celebrated as the expansions.
I can't even remember the original, the single
Hordes of the
campaign.
Underdark and
it was okay. I remember.
I might be
playing
getting
it.
confused. Mask of the Betrayer, I think, for Neverwinter Nights 2.
That was
Hordes of the Underdark for number 1.
Yeah, Neverwinter Nights 2, Mask of the Betrayer by George Zietz is considered, one of the best role-playing experiences out there. Now, interestingly, if we're talking about gold box games in D&D, and with the time that we have, really, we could just talk about just the D&D related.
Yeah, don't forget, we got to talk a little bit about the black box games, too.
Yeah, so one thing I'll mention, though, and then I'll turn it over to Matt for the black box games, is AOL actually had a multiplayer implementation of the gold box game engine called Neverwinter Nights. And you could play a multiplayer version of Pool of Radiance, basically, that game engine. And I think it costs like 50 cents an hour or something. Wow. And like people were spending a lot of money playing this game on AOL. And so when BioWare made their multiplayer instance version, they called it Neverwinter Nights. And, it's not a coincidence that, that was what it was called on AOL, the multiplayer thing. All right, Matt, take us away on the black box games.
Go on then. Tell me about the black box games.
Oh, so much to cover, yeah. But Eye of the Beholder was the first of these black box games, and they were by, oh, come on, what's the name? Westwood.
And that's where you got the first-person perspective, the first-person dungeon crawler. Which actually,
I remember that one actually. Yeah.
They basically took there's an older game called Dungeon Master, which I don't know how they got away with that name. That was FTL back in I guess it must have been sometime in the late 80s.
Yeah. And
this was more or less that with the D&D license wrapping. But very successful first. I think there's maybe 3 or 4. And then they did one that was basically a roguelike, so it would just generate the dungeons for you.
I had a Bard's Tale or Bard's Gate.
Yeah, the Bard's Tale.
Oh, Bard's Tale. That's one of the big. That's another the gold.
That's one of the big. That is a big franchise. That's a huge franchise.
I'm stretching back into the dim recesses of my memory.
Yeah, that was one of the really successful. Right. There it is, Bard's Tale. Yeah, that was
got the album cover.
That was one of the really successful non-D&D related computer role-playing game franchises in the 80s. I would say that your biggies are, of course, you've got all the Forgotten Realms games, gold box stuff. You have Wizardry, Ultima. Ultima's always been big. When did Might and Magic really get rolling, Matt?
It came out, I want to say, like late 80s. I mean, it was, every time I look it up, I'm always surprised. I thought it was earlier. But he was tapping in. Like the Apple II was definitely nearing the end of its cycle.
That's another thing that's interesting about computer role-playing games that's different from tabletop role-playing games is a lot of times the franchises that people love or that they were exposed to 86, so mid-80s, or that they were exposed to at all is completely dependent on what computer they or their friends had. So, the operating system of a tabletop role-playing game is much wider in use than the operating system of a Commodore 64.
You don't have to have a particular brand of table.
Right, exactly. So, people who had, what is it, a ZX Spectrum?
I just had a little Amish table. I couldn't play any of them.
Yeah, so people who had a ZX Spectrum compared to people who had a Commodore, compared to people who had an Atari, ST or whatever could have games that the other ones had never even heard of, but they passionately loved
like The
them.
Hobbit we were talking about earlier.
So that was, your operating system was very important. Now, as the game got real popular, it would get ported. So you would have it on the Commodore 64, you would have it on Atari, you would have it on whatever. But there's a lot of
DOS.
There's a lot of games now, or back then, that were one system only. And it wasn't necessarily like it is today with consoles where like Xbox is like, no, this is going to be Xbox exclusive. It's simply they didn't have the resources to port it out to other systems.
One of the things, too, the Apple II just had this, apparently, this was before my time, obviously, but apparently just had this fabulous programming environment. It was really easy to program, really well documented. So you had people sticking to that platform long after it had been surpassed, graphically and hardware-wise. I think Lord British is one of those holdouts.
Yeah.
But the Gold Box games, interestingly enough, were developed on and for the Commodore 64. That's probably one of the only major series. I don't know, maybe Bard's Tale. I think that might have been Apple II as well.
Yeah.
I didn't have that myself. A friend of mine.
Not sure about that one.
So I remember it.
So I want to,
It's supposed to be Tales of the Unknown, Volume 1, The Bard's Tale.
And the reason it's called The Bard's Tale is because originally it was going to be like The Bard's Tale, and then the next game was going to be like The Thief's Tale, and then the next game was going to be like The Wizard's Tale. But The Bard's Tale proved so successful that they just kept going with The Bard's Tale. So that's why it's called The Bard's Tale, if anyone's curious. So I wanted to go, Russ, you had said while we were on Facebook or email or something a couple of days ago, you said Neverwinter Nights is like your ultimate role-playing game experience, computer role-playing game. You love it. Obviously the multiplayer aspect and the mods, building modules, running modules, being a DM behind the computer monitor kind of thing. But what did you think of the action? I mean, was that the only thing that kept you playing, or did you like the implementation of the I think it was 3rd edition rules on computer?
Was it 2nd edition? I can't.
I think it was 3rd edition. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, maybe it was. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like the single player campaign, I don't even remember. That's how much of an impression that made on me. I know I played it all.
Right.
Where was it? Lady Erebeth.
But I don't remember.
Those creatures. There's a plague.
Was there? I believe you. Sounds like the sort of thing that would be in a computer game. Creatures.
The main thing I remember about the first or the single player campaign for Neverwinter Nights, and it's a little eerie and creepy, is there's a part where you have to go into the spirit world, and to do so you have to stab yourself with a knife and kill yourself, and then you wake up and I'm like, wow, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
So
when I had trouble going back to those Baldur's Gate ones because they used the 2nd edition rules, and to be honest, 2nd edition
they got about 1 million editions.
It's probably
of it now.
my favourite, nostalgia-wise, is my sort of edition of D&D. But I have trouble playing video games that use those rules now, and I don't know why.
My main beef with now Baldur's Gate is Baldur's Gate 1, 2. Now they've come up with there's a company called Beamdog that's been putting out remastered editions, and they put out an interquel. So they put out Sage of Dragonspear and Siege. I always get that one mixed up. And it tells the story in between Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2. And now
I had a lot of controversy with that.
Yeah,
though.
and now Baldur's Gate 3 is coming, where everybody turns into mind flayers, evidently. And
that's Larian Studios doing that one.
Yeah, it should probably be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm curious.
If anybody can do it, it's probably
Larian.
It looks good. I think we haven't seen any gameplay footage of that yet, have we? It's just
no, it's just I've been around long enough now that I don't get sold on a game on a cinematic, but I'm like, it's neat. It's a good advertising thing. But the thing with, like, me personally, I like a computer role-playing game that adapts as faithfully as possible. If it's going to, say, be based on D&D, I want you to implement as faithfully as possible the tabletop role-playing game rule set, which is one of the reasons I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing with Solasta Crown of the Magister. It really feels like 5e. Baldur's Gate, which, I don't know, I'm in the minority here, because Baldur's Gate is one of the most beloved computer RPGs out there, period. People love it. But it it made some compromises, and it does a real time with pause combat system instead of a turn-based strategic combat system. And that always bugs me, because I don't feel like I'm playing true D&D when I get into real time with pause.
See, I prefer it though.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I find it more immersive.
Well, you might have. Did you ever play Diablo?
I have not.
Because that's the one that really set off the whole action RPG.
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like it. I don't like it to be too frenetic and too twitchy. I like. When you have a turn-based system, there's a orderliness to it, isn't there? There's a. Do you know what I mean? It's
right, and that appeals to me. Like, I like to take my time. Yeah. And like, where am I putting my fireball? Okay, who am I enlarging? Yeah, okay, where am I? And you don't get that with real time with pause. And a lot of times I'm like, why is he going over there?
Yeah, you can really, if you compare like the latest Dragon Age game to Divinity Original Sin 2.
Right. Yeah. And,
same kind of thing.
And speaking of, I did want to point out is something I was going to mention anyway. If people want a good behind the scenes, I want to run like a game like Neverwinter Nights Dungeon Master mode. Divinity Original Sin 2 is evidently very, very good. In fact, I can't remember the main guy behind Larian. He went to Wizards of the Coast.
Is it Sven?
Yeah, Sven or Vinka? I'm not sure, but he went to Wizards of the Coast and showed where he built out Lost Mine of Phandelver in which is the starter set adventure, not the essentials kit, but the starter set adventure for 5e. And he built it out in the GM mode in Divinity Original Sin 2. And Wizards of the Coast was super impressed with it. And they said, yeah, you have our blessing to put that out there. So if you're looking for that kind of rich behind the scenes experience that Neverwinter Nights did, people can check out Divinity Original Sin 2.
That might be the one to go for then.
Yeah.
I've never played it, but I'm going to now. I'm going to try it.
So, and man, I appreciate you having us on. This is a huge subject.
Yeah, thank you very much.
The book is Dungeons and Desktops, The History of Computer Role-Playing Games, second edition. You can get it on Amazon, on CRC Press, etc. I just wanted to run through sort of the chapter lists in here to give people an idea of what's in here. Chapter 1 is Introduction to Computer Role-Playing Games. Chapter 2 is Origins, and that goes all the way back to tabletop war games. You'd be shocked how much baseball simulation games play into the fact that we have tabletop.
Oh, Stratomatics.
Yeah, Stratomatics, tabletop war games, J.R.R. Tolkien, etc. The Dark Age is when games were basically being played on mainframes in universities and people were adapting Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. Then we have the Bronze Age, which is...
call it the Dork Ages.
Yeah, the Dork Ages. And then you've got the Bronze Age, which is first CRPGs for personal computers. The Silver Age is when you get into like Ultima, Wizardry, Telengard, Sword of Fargol, etc. The birth of the Golden Age is where we get into Bard's Tale, more Ultima games, Might and Magic. That's what begins the Golden Age. And then a chapter all of its own is SSI, the Golden Age. Those are those gold box games and black box games. Then Origin had a Golden Age with the Ultima series, Wizardry. I mean, because these franchises keep going. Of course, Wasteland, which led to Fallout, is super important. We didn't even get into like non-D&D types game. Then we have some stuff on Japanese role-playing games. Then we get into chapter 11 is Dungeon Master and the Rise of Real-Time 3D. Chapter 12 is other games of the Golden Age. Chapter 13 is the epic fails, where things start going bad. Chapter 14 is the Platinum Age. And that's when we get into, Diablo and, Ultima Underworld, the Elder Scrolls. Chapter 16 is Fallout and Baldur's Gate. Chapter 17 is more Platinum Age stuff, Dungeon Keeper and Betrayal at Krondor, etc. Chapter 18 is Birth of the Modern Age. You get Vampire the Masquerade. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is one of the most highly regarded role-playing games out there. Of course, Neverwinter Nights, my personal favorite role-playing game of all time, Knights of the Old Republic.
That's a good one.
Modern JRPG, Chapter 19, Modern JRPGs. Chapter 20, The Rise of the MMORPG. Chapter 21, the late modern age, where you get into Bethesda with Oblivion and Skyrim. More, then we get Mass Effect, Dragon Age, The Witcher. And then chapter 22, and in some ways, this is the most important chapter in the second edition, is we called it the Renaissance Kickstarted. There's a Kickstarter Renaissance in computer role-playing games. And chapter 23 is The Road Ever Ventures Forth, where we kind of take a sneak peek at the future of games that are coming and how the publishing is changing. You don't really need a publisher anymore. And then finally, Matt wrote a bestiary. Have you ever seen those like film guides, Russ, where it's like Leonard Maltin's Guide to Movies, and it's this big thick thing, and every movie only gets like one little paragraph with a quick rating? Matt did that in the back for hundreds of games that we didn't have time to do a full write up for.
I see you've got basically a paragraph each.
For each one. Yeah. And it's an amazing resource for people that are in the history of computers, history of role-playing games, history of computer role-playing games. So, again, we appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
This is not a casual read. It's a big, thoroughly researched. It's an astonishing piece of work, to be honest. It's
well, Matt deserves most of the credit.
How long did it take you to write this book originally? Before Shane came and wrecked it.
Which is what happened.
Yeah, we did. One of the fun things Shane did, we added the sketches to the book.
Yeah.
Little mini sketches.
Yeah, we added some humor. We've gotten a lot of comment. We didn't know how that was going to go over. Matt and I have like a little Abbott and Costello routine throughout the book where we're cracking jokes. And we didn't know how that was going to go over, if the publisher would even keep it. But it's been one of the most positively commented on things in the book, because it helps it keep from being just a dry, scholarly tone.
Yeah, but to Russ, your question, I'd probably say at least a couple of years went into this.
You can tell. Right, anyway.
Well, thanks so much for that. One thing I did want to say, it's all color screenshots. There's like 200. So even, I see a lot of people just flip through the book and look at the screenshots for like an hour. So.
Right. Well, thank you both.
That's all for this week's
so much
podcast.
For coming on.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Russ. We appreciate the opportunity, and I guess I'll see you next week.
Shane, you'll be joining me again next week.
All right. And best thoughts and wishes to Peter on a swift recovery.
Well, I'll let you know if I hear anything about him.
Bye. Thanks again.
All right then. Goodbye, guys.
Apparently, I now have to read this to you. This is the official podcast of Morrus's unofficial tabletop RPG news, which you can find at enworld.org. You can find show notes at morrus.podbean.com or wherever you found the podcast. If you feel like they deserve it, you can support the show on Patreon. In return, you will receive exclusive bonus content. Just go to patreon.com/Morrus. If you're interested in his babbling nonsense, you can follow at Morrus on the Twitter. Send your emails to morruspodcast@gmail.com. Not all of your emails, just the ones you want us to see. That's it. I'm bored now. You can go away. Shoo, off you go. Goodbye. Get out of here.